American downtowns are currently wrestling with millions of square feet of empty, aging corporate real estate. But right now, $181 million project is proving that these dormant concrete giants hold massive economic potential. Enter the newly opened Fidelity Hotel. To understand the scale of this overhaul, we have to look at what the building used to be. For decades, this 14-story structure, originally built in 1913 as the Gwynne Building, served as the formidable global headquarters for Procter & Gamble. It sits squarely at the intersection of 6th and Main Streets, right in the heart of downtown Cincinnati's Fountain District. Converting a century-old corporate fortress into a hospitality destination requires a process called adaptive reuse. Instead of demolishing the structure, developers strip it down to the studs and heavily retrofit the internal engineering to serve a completely new industry. It is highly complex and wildly expensive. New Waterloo's investment prioritizes the existing historical equity of the site, turning an $81 million risk into a high-density economic engine that would be difficult to replicate with new construction alone. The aesthetic stakes for this project were high. Designed by Looney and Associates, the aesthetic leans heavily into Cincinnati's historical legacy as the Paris of America, paying strict homage to the rigid, ornate lines of Beaux Arts architecture. On the exterior, that meant painstaking preservation. Construction crews spent months executing a meticulous restoration of the original limestone and steel facade to return it to its 1913 condition. But the interior presented a severe engineering problem. Looking at this wireframe of the original corporate floor plan, you can see a dense, solid block of space. It was incredibly dark, making it entirely incompatible with the natural light requirements needed to build a modern 165-room boutique hotel. The solution required major architectural surgery. Engineers mapped out and executed a massive 4-story interior light court, carving a brand new vertical shaft directly through the center of the solid building structure to let the sun pour in. This newly hollowed void acts as the core anchor point for the entire property, illuminating a sweeping grand staircase that connects the upper floors down into a newly vaulted lobby. Successful adaptive reuse requires these aggressive, highly technical structural alterations to be seamlessly integrated into the historical preservation, ensuring the guest experiences a historical space that functions with modern efficiency. Inside that heavily engineered shell, the developers laid out an expansive commercial footprint featuring 165 guest rooms, including 17 luxury suites, a presidential suite, and 2 specialized bunk rooms. But dropping a massive property into a neighborhood that has existed for a century risks feeling like a sterile, generic transplant. The operation needs a specific, local identity to survive. They solved this through a highly localized food and beverage strategy. Helmed by local chef Brad Bernstein, the culinary programming draws direct inspiration from the geography and agriculture of the Ohio River Valley. To keep the building active around the clock, they built out 2 distinct dining concepts. There's Gwynne, serving as the primary regional restaurant and lobby bar, operating alongside Cora's All Day Cafe, a market space that smoothly transitions into an evening wine bar. This minimalist floor plan illustrates the massive scale of the property's public infrastructure. It houses over 7,770 square feet of event space, a sprawling layout anchored by the Vanderbilt Ballroom, flanked by a 24-hour fitness facility. By combining high-capacity event spaces with hyper-regional, chef-driven dining, the developers ensure the building functions as a permanent hub for Cincinnati locals, rather than a transient stopover for out-of-town guests. There is one final, often hidden, piece of infrastructure inside New Waterloo's operation, a direct, localized, philanthropic business loop called the Community Love Program. The mechanics are straightforward. For every single night booked at the property, a $10 donation is routed immediately to 1001 Colors, a creative nonprofit operating right there in the city. Watch how this data multiplies. You take $10, apply it to a high-occupancy, 165-room property, and run that every day of the year. It generates a massive, sustained volume of annual funding for the neighborhood. As the property thrives financially, it automatically subsidizes the local creative class, the exact people who make the downtown district culturally vibrant and desirable to visit. 'Tis a closed, self-sustaining loop. a preserved historic shell housing a localized commercial ecosystem, feeding a regenerative financial model. The Fidelity Hotel demonstrates how a single historic shell can be converted into a dense, multi-layered contributor to a city's core. It provides a specific, working example of how private capital can be used to reclaim and reinvest in the vacant corporate architecture of the American downtown.